Okay, well, welcome to, um, I have to catch my breath here. Oh, God, drugs and crime, J250. For the next 5.5 weeks, you'll have me as your instructor, professor, leader, everything that you need to have this course. I think you're going to find this a very interesting course. I have taught this course several times. In fact, I helped with another really great instructor. I always plug her name, Patty Laney, one of my colleagues, to redo this course. We had 11 weeks before and made a lot of major changes, and I've taught this 5.5 week course a couple quarters ago, and I love this course. This is an exciting course. It's very hands-on. There's a lot of discussional issues, a lot of things that you'll be excited to learn as you take this course. I did introduce myself through the student lounge, and you saw my welcome with my family picture. You saw some stuff about me, but you're going to learn more about me at the very end as well. And so we're going to take this first session, which is basically an open house. And at the end, I'm going to give you a keyword that I'm going to need you to give me to be able to receive your points for attending the lecture and or reviewing the archive or recorded version. Okay, so let's get right into me sharing. Okay, let's go back to this. Hit it again. I hit it again. There we go. All right, it was fighting me a little bit. Let's move you up there a little bit. Okay, so you can see this is your course homepage. And the first thing that you see there is my little mug shot there that was taken. I'm smiling. That means I wasn't taken into jail or nothing like that. But the point of the matter is that I wanted you to see me because you already saw me in the student lounge. My name, Richard Wright, includes my phone number here, which is my cell phone, and a very important message after that. And some students miss this point. It says, students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. You figure that one out. And so the point of the matter is that I'm available to you. Now, if you happen to email me or phone me, make sure you provide the details of your name as well as what class you're in, because I have over 100 students, and so that I can know, first of all, what topic that you're dealing with, and then why you're calling me. But don't hesitate. It means what it says. It's not a joke. It is, but it's very, very, very true. And so feel free to do so. And then I point out that APA and critical thinking are important in grading of all assignments. APA requirements are set out. We have also over here to your left a resource that will help you if you clicked on that, and it will help you to learn more about APA, everything you need to know, including the video in there. And then there's some other details down further on this cover page. The course homepage has a whole lot of valuable information. Take time to familiarize yourself with the things on here and pay close attention because they will help you. I do it like no other professor does. I have more information on my course homepage than a lot do because I've taken the years I've been teaching and added more when I see something that would benefit students even more. So APA is critical. You'll see it in your rubrics. Your rubrics are included in every assignment. We'll share how that works by showing you just week 1. And critical thinking is very important. You're going to make sure that you run your papers through Grammarly, all of your papers. Don't worry about discussion posts, but your written assignments and projects and things of that nature that you have in this course, you want to make sure that you have critical thinking. And critical thinking involves providing details yourself, things that will help me to understand that you understand. Don't just take information from research, but I want you to analyze it. I want you to critique it. I'm naturally of that mode because I went to law school. So I'm trained under what's called the Socratic method, where we were taught by a series of questions until a light bulb came on. Well, I've learned how to do that naturally. And that's what I want to teach you, to be critical thinkers. And we'll talk about the value of critical thinking a little later in this session. And then I have additional information. Again, in all caps. I have students sometimes that say, when they see all caps, they think that a person is yelling. That's not why I do it. I put it in there because I want to call and emphasize it. Sometimes I'll put it in all caps and capitalize it. I'm not all capitalize it, but all caps, and then put it in a color where you can see it, like you see when you see your announcements. The point of the matter is I remind you that you have to conduct research for all of your assignments and not just use the textbook. In fact, the textbook should be a starting point. We have the library and learning resources, which will help you. There's a tab down here that leads you to that, as well as under your resource tab. Your resource tab is right up here at the top on the right-hand side where my mouse is. And if you click on that, you'll see valuable resources such as Grammarly. You want to make sure you run all your papers through Grammarly. You each have a Rasmussen Grammarly account. And with that Grammarly account, it's free. You have a box that you can check for plagiarism. When we say plagiarism, if you see a too high percentage, you will find yourself in the situation you'll find yourself in a situation that you are actually going to make sure that you have more critical thinking in there. But usually, if you go above 25%, then you're going to get a hit on your grade. In other words, you'll lose, let's say, 26% of your grade. So I'll take 26% off the top of your grade. I won't go through the rubric, but I will share with you a reminder of what I just said a few minutes ago about critical thinking. So Grammarly is important that you utilize that tool. If you have problems using that, feel free to reach out to a tutor. And if you need tutoring, I give some information down here as to how you can do it. If I see it, I can refer you to a tutor if I see it too many times. And then the APA format, citations in the body of the paper, references at the end, a cover sheet, and 12-point Roman font. That's what you should be using. And please submit your papers in double and not single space as well. I don't take off points for that double single space, but that's the correct way to do your papers. And then I have helpful resources that deal with tutoring. Student success tells you how to be successful. Library answers, writing guide, as well as the library and learning resource, which helps you to be able to find out information. Then we talk about tutoring, and we talk about tutoring for all students and how it works. And there's various ways in which you could get it. By the way, let me make this announcement to you. Tutoring is not just for students who are struggling, but it also can be something that can help you as a student to perform better as well. We have students who actually are hired by the college who are currently students who will help you with your assignments, and they are familiar with APA, Grammarly, they're familiar with writing, and all the things that are necessary to help you. You can be a student tutor. There are times when they will let me know when they're looking for new student tutors. But these are students who are at the top of the program. They're getting good grades, and they can help you. So then I got some little articles that will help you as a criminal justice student. You can feel free to download those at your leisure. And then I have a critical thinking video, which helps you with what we talked about a few minutes ago. You can copy and paste this onto your browser, and it will lead you to an awesome video on critical thinking to help you understand what we're talking about. Your rubrics for your written assignment are, which is your course project in this course. That's your written assignment. And you'll see each week with each written assignment the rubrics. And we're going to give you an example of that in a few minutes. So they're located in each written assignment. Then for your discussion posts, there is a rubric. When you do discussions, you should recognize the fact that discussion posts, well, I'll wait until we get to the calendar and you'll see what I'm talking about. So discussion posts. Now we have at the bottom here your sessions for the lectures, beginning with today's lecture, which is an open house, which is different from, I won't be going over some of the things I'm going over today after today. Weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be Tuesdays. So your next lecture after today is not Thursday of next week, but Tuesday of next week, which is the 14th, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And most of the time they'll go that time. There's a few that will go longer because there's a video in one I know that's a very long video, and I may have to cut that video, but it's a very good one, but that's not until week 5. But anyway, you must attend a live lecture or listen to the archive. Each week I'll give you a key word that you're required to give me if you don't attend, or even if you do attend, you still give me. Then at the recording section, each week I will put the link to the recording, as well as I will email it to you, which will take place after today's session. So now we got the writing process here. You can open that up more, and you can be able to see the writing process. I'm not going to spend time on that. And then I'm going to scroll down to the welcome announcement, which this was the first announcement, and it tells you about me. It tells you what you should do. Students should check the announcements. The announcements are so important. Also, you should check your course mail, because your course mail is different from your student mail. Your student mail is outside the course. But in here, you have a link that you can, that comes only to this course. And the only time I see that is when I look in this course. Now, if you wanted to email me outside of that, you can email me outside of that at richard.wright@rasmussen.edu, and I will get that. And it comes to me pretty fast. It actually shows up on this thing here, my phone, and I see emails all the time. And also, so do texts. They show up as messaging to me, so I get that as well. So check your course mail. The syllabus, read it. I'm going to go over it in a little bit for you. Check your calendar. Your calendar, which we're going to go over in a few minutes, it explains the whole quarter. You could print it up and you'll see it. But you got to make sure that you click on the calendar to open up to see real details. It'll give you some initial information. General course questions. This is under discussions. If you have a question that anyone can answer, not a private question, you can post it there, and either I'll see it or a classmate will see it. Then under your resources tab, you have valuable information such as Grammarly. I showed you where that is. Such as information relating to APA that you also have on the home page. Library and learning, which are your resources, your research, all of that's available under your resources tab, but I also have it on your home page. Then your report tab is how you check your grades. Now, generally your grades will be posted within a week after you submit them. And sometimes I fall further behind, got over 100 students, but I try to keep it pretty close to that. And so you'll see your grades there. So don't get alarmed sometime if it goes a little past and you don't see it. Then it tells you about the lecture that's taking place right now. All right. So now let's get into this week 1 announcement. Each week you will see an announcement. The first week announcement is the topic that we're dealing with in Module 1. Psychoactive drugs, categories, effects on the body, classification of controlled substances. And so you're going to read chapters 1 and 2 of the text, Drugs, Crime, and Justice, which is an excellent book. And then complete the activities. There are activities called the Controlled Substance Act, Controlled Substance Act activity, narcotics, amphetamines, cocaine, and marijuana, and synthetic drugs. I'll show you all of that and where you'll be able to find that information as well. And then talks about our lecture in the next paragraph, and it tells you too in there what I said is that the lecture is today, and then after that, beginning next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. every Tuesday. And then the link, of course, is right there as well. Be sure to participate in the discussion assignment, classification of drugs, controlled substances. Now, notice this. This week, and this week only, and you'll see that in a minute when we go over the calendar, the deadlines in the course calendar, the initial posts are due 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, Saturday. Did you hear that? The initial posts and your reply posts are also due the same day. That is the exception to the rule. You're going to see starting next week with Module 2 that your initial posts are due on Tuesdays, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. So don't get hooked on initial posts on Saturday. You're going to get hooked on posts for discussions for Saturday. That's reply posts, okay, until we get to the last week. But then we got plenty of time to deal with that. So, and then complete the quiz. Complete the quiz. Now, I usually recommend students when they do the quiz that they do the quiz after they've gone through all the material for the week. And make sure that you do that. Now, notice this week that is the written assignment for the week. For week 1 is the quiz. You don't have a paper that's going to be due. You'll see that in a few minutes. And then I give my motto, finish strong and start strong. Some of you who've been in other classes with me will know what adversity as a springboard success means, but I'm going to share it with you at the very end, only today. Then you'll understand why I take the position that I do, okay? So those are the announcements. Now, let's quickly go over and look at the course calendar. And then we'll go to the syllabus, and then we'll go into the module itself. Okay, so you see your reading assignment, and if you click on this, put your mouse over it, click on it, left click, it opens it up, and it tells you what your reading is for the week. Every week you'll see that, okay? And then your live lecture, which if you click on that, it tells you what I'm going to do here. And then I talk about, I will cover the introduction to the course project because there's no written assignment for that this week. And then it talks about your initial post, and it tells the topic, classification of drugs, crimes, and controlled substances, and that's due this Saturday at the 11th by 11:59 p.m. as well as a reply post. And then your timed quiz. Once you start it, make sure that your place is quiet. Make sure you don't have any interruptions so that you can focus on doing well with the quiz. We'll talk about the points that you get for that in a minute. Okay. Then notice next week, we start on Monday. Reading assignments are from that point on every Monday. Because, of course, it didn't start until Wednesday. That's why we did that this time. Reading, and then your initial post, you see, is due on the same day as your live lecture, okay, that night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, then your reply post. Okay. So now, that's that. Now let's go to the syllabus. By the way, the calendar has the whole layout for the whole quarter. Again, there's information that you already know that's in here. Information in my instructor notes, you already know that because it's on your course homepage too as well. Okay, and then it tells you what your text is. And your discussion posts, you know when they're due. The key is to get your discussion posts in on time. Every day that you're late, you will lose a point. Discussion posts, of course, should be detailed. I do encourage you to reply to more than one post. You don't get extra points, but I appreciate it. I also like to see citations and or references in your posts. That means that you didn't just off the top of your head. You did get some information from somewhere to help you answer your post. And the other thing is this, is that it shares with your students, your colleagues, information as well. So what you're doing is you're communicating with each other. You're working as a team together. And, you know, exercise, I don't have to say this, but I say it anyway. Remember to be courteous and use proper etiquette. Not too many of my students, I think I only had one that had some bad language. And I said, that's not acceptable. We're not going to allow that. Make sure your discussion posts are not one-liners. We want to see some things that you thought about. Yes or no, or I agree, or I like your post. If you do, say I like the post, and then elaborate on it, because you're going to lose points if you just have that. The other thing I want to say to you about discussion posts, and it'll be later on, but I'll tell you now, is that if your discussion posts are submitted after the forum has ended, you will not receive credit for them. You can't do a makeup discussion post. So in other words, since discussion posts are generally due initially on Tuesday, then your reply posts are done on Saturday. If you have not submitted an initial post by Sunday, anything you submit on Sundays is going to be considered as zero. And I'll say that in there. You'll be reminded of it in my comments that I'll have. If you have a good post, you'll see a general message that I give to you saying I like the post and you had good content, details, and information. That means you did well in it. And then you'll get your maximum number of points. But it's got to be on time. Got to be on time. All right? And again, I encourage additional posts. I'll let you know that I like them and appreciate as well. Be sure of one thing. There's a remark that I usually like to start off with students with grading is I appreciate the time and effort you put into completing the assignment. I'm not just throwing you something. I mean that, okay? Because I appreciate you making the effort. Even sometimes when you're off base, at least the effort lets me know that you're paying attention. And then this talks about the APA, which I won't go over anymore. Then what your course consists of. We're going to cover that in more detail in a second. And then, so now, let's get to down here. Here's what your course consists of. 60 points, or 16%, is for discussions. So you get 5 points for initial post, 5 points for a reply post. Now, if you do more than one reply post, you don't get another 5 points. Most you can get is the 10 points for that week. So multiply that by 6 weeks, that's 60 points. Your quizzes, you get 75 points. There are not quizzes every week. You'll see why that is in a few minutes. And so that counts for 20.5% of your grade. Your course project is the biggest because that's your real written assignment for this particular course. And you'll see that in your rubrics as well. Almost half of the percentage constitutes your course project. Then your final exam, 40 points. Somebody says, oh, wow, that's under discussion. That's the lowest. Yeah, but don't underestimate that exam. It is going to be the final week, and you're going to want to do well on it because it could be the difference in A, a B, a C, a D, or F. Live lectures, you have 5 points that you get, and your 5 points, you must submit the keyword no later than the day assignments are due, which is on Sundays. If you submit it the next day, that Monday, you'll still get points, but it'll be 4 points. And then 3, it goes down to the point that you get 0. So that's what we have in this course. Now, I want to make an announcement that I make in every class, and that is never, ever call me, email me, text me, ask me, what do I need to do to pass this course, because I'm telling you that already. Or definitely don't ask me, what does it take to get a C or a D? I'm not going to answer you. I'm not going to answer you. I'm not going to be rude. I'm just going to be upfront. I don't work to produce C students. You can do that all by yourself. You don't need any help for that. But I can tell you this, when employers are looking for people who have that mentality, you're going to run into a problem, and you're not going to elevate or succeed. I'm focused on being an A student in every class that I took. I didn't always get it, but I fought to get it. The key is A's or B's, nothing under that, okay? And I offer every opportunity to my students to guide them to the top, to get you on the honor roll and dean's list. There are students who are former students of mine that are even some in this class know that that's what I stand for, and that I will work with you, but you got to put in the work itself. I don't give anything. I work you, and you get what you're supposed to get. Okay, I'll respond to your messages within 48 hours. I don't even get anywhere near 24. Most of the time I don't. And then I'll do these other things. Now let's talk about the transferable skills real quick. These are skills that we've identified at this college that will help you to be successful in your careers. And we start by having you to develop them as a habit in school. Good communicators are what oftentimes, whether you're in corrections, law enforcement, probation, parole, whatever agencies that you work for, written and oral communication is critical and very important. And so we suggest to you that you operate in that vein. In your assignments, we're helping you to exercise communication as well. Oral communication may or may not occur with you, with me much, but when you're in the residential, it's very strong. But the point of the matter is that we do everything we can to speak to you and share with you information, and you need to be able to bring that back out. Most of your communication in this course and in most of your courses is written communication, but sometimes you'll have projects that are field reports, reports where you have to go out and do a course project, such as if you took Introduction to Corrections, if you take contemporary issues in criminal justice or critical issues in criminal justice, you'll have to demonstrate those things. So it's important. Critical thinking, I already talked about that. Very, very, very important. Employers are looking for critical thinkers. Digital fluency. Everything's digital now. When I came out of law school, 78, that didn't exist. But now I've adapted to it. But you should know, textbooks and books, I had to carry regular big books. But now, I have my books actually on my phone and on my my Android pad and in the computer. They're embedded in the course. So the point of the matter is that everything, your research tools, and being able to, navigate the internet, social media, and knowing how to be able to find information, which ties also with the information literacy issue. But you need to be fluent in being able to find things using digital resources. Diversity and teamwork. First of all, you're going to deal with people from all walks of life, various beliefs and cultures. You're going to respect those individuals. In criminal justice, it is so important, especially in law enforcement. You're going to be dealing with individuals from various backgrounds, and you're going to need to be able to communicate with those individuals and learn how to respect those individuals for their own cultures. Teamwork, you're going to be working in teams. We at the college, professors, I work with, for example, the advisors to help students. I work with admissions to help students. I work with the academic deans. I work with the people who help you get your jobs, and I work with them as well. So when you get out, you're going to be working on teams. You're going to be working with detectives, police officers who are uniformed, plain clothes. You're going to work with lawyers, defense, prosecutors, judges. You're going to work with technical people like forensic people, computer people, and all kinds of individuals, science people. And you're going to have all of them as part of your teams. So you're going to learn how to operate on a team. Then you're going to deal with it ethically. Ethics is so important. I used to teach a course called Ethics in Criminal Justice, but they merged that into one Gen Ed course that you guys all know that you have to take in ethics. The key thing is to operate in an ethical fashion while you're in school. You're going to have the academic ability to be able to succeed by providing good details and information. We have an academic integrity policy that exercises presents to you an opportunity to exercise ethical practices. I say this to you right now. Those who are unethical in high school, those who are unethical in college, operate unethically as a professional. And there are some bad situations that result for individuals who operate in that fashion. You can lose your license, or you could end up going to jail. Professional responsibility, operating within the responsibility of the agencies, organizations, or professions that you operate under. Lawyers have a code of conduct. Accountants have a code of conduct. Police officers have a code of conduct. All the people, any area that you work in, probation, parole, correction officers. Information literacy, being able to find information, and all of these will be included in your courses across this whole program, and including this class. Let me talk about the late assignment policy. If you are late with an assignment, you can lose up to 10% of your grade. And you can keep all the way. You see it. You can read it. Each day, you lose 10%. So the first day, you lose 10. The second day, you lose 20, 30, all the way till you get, by the time you get to 40, you failed. So it doesn't even matter whether you go all the way 7 days. But the point, except discussions. Discussions I already talked about. And discussion posts made after the due date, it says will not be accepted. Basically, it means you'll get a 0. But regarding late assignments, this third part of this, instructors may waive the late penalty or time frame in the case of extenuating circumstances as determined by the faculty. So I have the ability to be able to waive it. And no one bothers me, and I'm very flexible with it. But here's what I put the burden on my student. Let me know. If you have a situation that happens, let me know as soon as possible. Now, if it was me, I wouldn't send an email. I would either call or either text on the phone. Because if I see an urgent message on my phone, text, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll hit that phone number and I'll call you right away to talk to you. So be prepared for that to happen. Sometimes people text me and they're at work, and that's okay. I'll leave a voice message. Don't answer the phone if you're not supposed to be on the phone. I had a student that do that and was very upset because I kept them on the phone a while. But they didn't tell me until at the end. They said, you know, I'm at work. I said, I didn't know that. The point of the matter is that in an extenuating situation, when I see it's something that we could nip in the bud, and then also there are times when we can communicate by emails back and forth, and it doesn't hit it. You don't understand where I'm coming from. I don't understand where you're coming from. So the best way is to have a direct conversation, and that's how I operate. So if you have an extenuating circumstance, let me know. Something really bad happens to you, I will respond to you pretty fast. I've had deaths that happen suddenly. I've had illnesses. I've had all kinds of things. You can name it. I've had to deal with it. But let me know as soon as you humanly can. Okay? I do not give makeup work. It's impossible for me because I have over 100 students, and it's unfair. It's unfair to do it. All right? So that's the way we operate. That's what I'm going to talk about concerning that. I'm going to talk about incompletes. That's something you deal with later. The academic integrity policy, you can read that later yourself. Especially notice the issues that can get you. I mean, we're talking about ethics, integrity, again. So that's all part of this. When you come into this school, you agree to abide by this. It's part of your admissions. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing, okay? You're held to that standard. Okay, so now let's go and look at Module 1. Module 1, come up. Thank you. Okay, first of all, note at the bottom, and this is in this course, there's a great course guide. I recommend it to you. All you have to do is click on it, and it opens up. and it's going to take me directly to it. And it helps you with each module. It tells you things that will help you. Okay, there's even, okay, I got to run Adobe or Flash to let you see. So anyway, finding newspaper articles and things of that nature. So there's all kinds of things, your course projects, and so forth and so on. Don't neglect that. Don't neglect that. Our people put in some good time to get that information for you. So now let's go to your assignments for the week, and you will see what I said. Okay, your discussion post, and it tells you the details. I'm not going to go over that. Then it tells you your quiz. Now, this is a time quiz, and it's a 30-minute quiz. It is timed, okay? You want to make sure that you do that at the end, and then your live lectures, all right? So that's your written assignment for the week, the quiz. I suggest if you go over the materials before you take it, you'll do better. Don't have your book open. This is not an open book. We don't know. We can't follow you. But I can tell you this. You can't complete the quiz if you're trying to research and look for answers at the same time. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Okay, let's go back to now. And then let's look at the lesson content. Oh, well, I'm not going to show you that today. There's a rubric, but there's no rubric with the quiz. We'll deal with that next week. Okay. Again, it tells you what your assignments are. And then it talks about an introduction. So it talks about the Controlled Substance Act and so forth, and you go through. And normally in a lecture, I will discuss the details of what's in here and talk to you about some other things, elaborate kind of like a summary of this, and then explain some things to you. But I'm not going to do that this week because of the kind of class that the session this is. And then match the drugs to the correct schedule, and you can determine whether, for example, if you took peyote, let's see, I'm just going to throw it at schedule 2. Does it fit? It bounces back off. Does it fit? Correct. And it tells you. So you keep going. PCP. Correct. Anabolic steroid. Correct. And then Valium. Correct. And then you go to the next one. So you can keep going and you do the same thing. So it's a neat little tool. This will help you to prepare for the quiz. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Then the section, what are narcotics? And then you click on that and it opens it up. And it gives you more information. Same thing. Then you close it back up. What are amphetamines? Cocaine, marijuana. Very important for studying and preparing for the exam. Same thing here, little section on synthetic drugs. Okay? So now let's talk about the course project. Now, you're going to notice this is actually your sum total of written assignments outside of discussion posts. That's the unique thing about this particular course. And that's the cool thing about it, actually. So we're going to go over just basically, it says one of the most abused illegal substances is heroin, which is an opioid. You're going to hear us talk about that more and more. I'm going to share with you a seminar that I attended last quarter with some former addicts that came and gave us sessions. Look out for those kind of things on your campus, in your area. Go to them. You will learn a whole lot of very valuable information. And then it talks about other drugs and so forth and so on. And then it talks about what opioids are, and then working in the criminal justice field, drug properties of heroin as well as opioids. There's a connection between crime and opioid addiction. You're going to discover that just off the top throwing out. There is a relationship between crime, period, and drugs because people will commit crimes oftentimes to support their drug habits. That's just a simple statement. We'll elaborate on that later on in weeks to come. So anyway, you're going to learn to research about heroin and the effects on the body, use, and so forth and so on. And this will help you also with law enforcement efforts to combat the use of the drugs, which you're going to discuss or just learn in the modules. So in week 2, your written assignment is going to be, what is heroin? In week 3, it's going to be heroin and crime. And you should recognize that it's basically not one big paper, but each part is divided. Heroin and opioids in a law enforcement perspective. Heroin and addiction, one person's journey. Whew, that week 5 is going to be, it is something. It's something. That's all I can tell you. Wait till we get there. And then each part of the project must include a minimum of 3 credible and reliable resources. You're going to see this in the rubric. You cannot use your book as a reference for any part of the project. Do you see cannot capitalized? You cannot use Wikipedia because it is not credible. That you should learn that from other classes. You may include pictures, but doing so is not required. This week, in week 1, it tells you what I said. There is no assignment, but you could begin reading and doing research to learn more about the heroin epidemic. Week 2, you'll submit part 2 of the course project. First, you will research the path heroin follows from the poppy seeds to the streets and write a paper describing what you learned. And then you got part 3, 4, and 5. So this is a summary of what the project is all about. And I will give grading criteria for each one individually. If you have any general questions, you can post them in the general course questions and under the Get Started folder, and you want to make sure that you have that information there so that I can provide that or anybody can answer it for you. And so that's the project. Any questions? If you have any questions, type it in the chat box, and then I'll see it. If not, that, okay, great, great. And so I've gone over and taken the time. So now we're right at 7:27, but I'm going to take about 10 minutes or 10 to 15 minutes to share something with you that I want you to know and I want you to be aware of. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the classroom. I've covered everything I wanted to cover in the classroom as to how things work. So now let me share with you why I say adversity is the springboard to success. You'll see that under each announcement. I'll start from when it all started with me. When I was 7 years old, I was living in Chicago, on the west side of Chicago, which was a nice area when we first moved there, but then it started to change around 57. My dad was murdered in the house by a man who lived in the house, and it turns out later that I found out that my dad confronted the guy about an affair with my mother. So he came into the bedroom, They fought into the bedroom where I was sleeping and 5 younger sisters. My 5 younger sisters were under 7 because I was the oldest. And the next thing I knew, he took out a knife and stabbed my dad in the forehead. My dad was killed by this guy. He did not go to jail on a legal technicality, and he continued to live in the house with me. He also proceeded to beat my mother, and profusely, where he would even go to jail. She'd go back and get him. So I lived in a house of domestic violence. So he ended up beating her so bad that she was hospitalized. Her face was bruised really bad, swollen, stabbed her multiple times, but she didn't leave the man. So in the meantime, we moved from that area when I was 13 years old, no, 12 years old. And we moved into Indiana, Gary, Indiana, a nice home there at that time. And he moved there. By this time, my mother had 2 more children by him. They were all girls. So Memorial Day, and in between that time there was some beatings, but they stopped a little bit after an aunt came from Michigan, and she was pretty tough. She was a ruthless woman. She carried a pistol, and he respected her, so nothing happened. So anyway, she left to go back sometime around March or April of '63. And so Memorial Day of 1963, my mother went off to her restaurant and left me in charge of the girls. And the next day, I wake up, there was smoke in the house. I see the car that my mother and the man rode in pull away out of the driveway. So I go into her room and saw that she hadn't been sleeping in her bed. Well, that wasn't unusual, and I was often responsible for taking care of the household. But on this day, sometime later that day, when everybody was up, 2 gentlemen came to the door, identified themselves as police officers, and they announced that my mother was found dead in Chicago. And I started yelling the man's name just out loud and lost it. And then I had to gather my wits because my sisters, the baby was still being breastfed by my mother. That's how bad it was. And I had to stop and gather myself and take control. Well, my aunt from Chicago, one of them, came and took us back to Chicago to her house, and they were trying to decide what they were going to do with all 8 of us. There was even plans to split us up. It was pretty bad this one year in 1963. It was so bad that what I went through with losing my mother, I never went to her funeral. I couldn't. I went to the wake and saw her and lost it, and someone had to stay with me. So anyway, it was a tough time. So my other aunt, the one who had stayed with us before we were in Indiana, came and she said, nobody's going to split these kids up. I'm taking them. And she took us and had a house built in the Morgan Park area of Chicago, further south. And she decided that she was going to keep all the kids. In fact, she was going to adopt all the kids. I said I did not want to be adopted because I was the only one who could carry on my dad's name because the rest of them were girls. So her husband and I never got along after that. So I had more problems with him. So by this time, I'm 14 years old, and I find out that the man who killed my mother and dad years before that was being sentenced to serve 10 years in jail. which kind of like, well, 10 years is 10 years. But it was brought to my attention that at that time, you get a day for a day, which meant that every day he served, um, he cut the time in half. So 10 actually meant 5. And I was further advised that for good behavior, a year and a half could be cut off, and he could end up serving only 3.5 years. Here's a 14-year-old kid who's deeply disturbed, deeply troubled, deeply bothered by the situation that I was in, living with my aunt and uncle that I never liked. My aunt I got along with, but she was controlled by her husband. And I would find out later, years later, that one of the reasons why I really didn't like him and I didn't know is that he did things to my sisters. You use your imagination and you'll already know. So it was pretty tough, guys. And so anyway, I ended up finding myself in a situation where this man actually, it just gave me fits. So I went out and I heard a lady on the radio, and I went and found her and asked her if she'd be my mother. And she learned a little bit about my story, said she'll be my friend. So she ended up staying my friend, and she stayed in my life. By the way, years and years and years later, she legally adopted me. But I was able to keep my name because I was a lawyer then. Yeah, I was a grown man then, and representing people in court, handling adoptions as well as criminal. But anyway, the point of the matter is that I went through some pretty tough times going back to that 14-year-old kid. And it was brought to my attention that that's just the way it is. And so I don't know why my phone's going off. It's in my pocket. So anyway, sorry about that. It usually doesn't go off. So anyway, the truth of the matter is that they told me, they says, well, that's just the way it is. I said, I don't, what do you mean? I'm not, that's not acceptable. Then somebody finally said, that's just the way the law is. So I said that that I did not want to be in a position where I'm stuck. And I said, what can I do about it? He says, nothing you can do about it. It's lawyers that run it. So I did what I knew next. I went to the librarian at school. I was still in 8th grade. And I asked her if she had a book on lawyers or attorneys. And she had one little book. I said, may I check it out? And she said, yes, I did. I took it home. And that night I stayed up reading that book. Well, the next day, anybody I met, I introduced myself as Richard Wright. I said, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I had all kind of problems, family members that try to discourage me. They says, oh, it's a tough thing. But see, guys, here's who I am. If it's something I want to do, and I decide to do it, I'm going to go through all the obstacles that it takes to get through it. And I may take a little while to get it done, but I'm not going to abandon. I'm not going to abandon. As you know, I did not. So what happened next is that I ended up going on, graduating from high school, and then my aunt, I left her home. I ended up living with some friends for a little while, and then I got married shortly after that. In the meantime, I got a job that my friend's mother had a friend. She got me a job as a messenger, a great job. I was a messenger. Somebody said, well, what was so great about that? It was in a law firm. And so it was a big Jewish law firm, about 24, 25 lawyers. And when I got there, taking their lunches, running errands for them, I introduced myself and told them what I told everybody. My name is Richard Wright, and I'm going to be a lawyer. In the meantime, I started school. My aunt and uncle refused to sign for me to go to college on a scholarship. All it took was their signature, and it was free room, board, and books. But since they wouldn't do it, I decided I was going to do it myself. and I ended up going to the junior college at night. I did not have a car. I'd have to get up in the morning and ride two buses and a train, L train at that, which is a subway in Chicago, to get to work at 8:30 in the morning. I'd be at work until 4, and then had to be in class in downtown area called Loop, one of the city colleges of Chicago. It's called Harold Washington now, and I registered for classes at night and Saturdays. And so I did that. In the meantime, here comes one child in 71. Here comes a second one in 72. In the meantime, in the law firm while I was working, I end up meeting people that took an interest in me. One of them was a guy named Ray Kroc. He was the chairman and founder of McDonald's, and he liked me because he said that I was a kid that was going places. The guys in the mirror room used to wear shirts like what I got on, a collared shirt. You can see it here, okay, which is okay. But I didn't do that. I wore a white shirt and tie every day. And I stood out. And anyway, I expressed to Mr. Kroc. He asked me questions about myself, and I told him. So anyway, we became friends, and I became his special messenger. Well, while working at the law firm and going to school at night, I continued to show them that I knew what I was doing. And then one day they came to me and says, we need a file clerk to work in the file department along with other people. One person has left. Would you be interested? My answer was yes. I didn't even hesitate. I didn't even think about it. So I didn't ask questions what it involved. I got the job, and then I learned from the person who taught me. I ended up doing that. In the meantime, something happened to the law librarian. So guess who they came to? You're right. They came to me. And they said, would you be willing to run our library? Now, I know nothing about that. So I said yes. So I got in there and I learned what to do. And then while I was working as a law librarian, I'm still moving in my education. Every semester, I would end up on the dean's list. I would give the information to my bosses, and they would publish it in a bulletin that went all throughout the law office that all the employees saw, and the lawyers took particular note, and they would congratulate me. And they knew what I was dealing with. They also knew of the bad situations I had gone through with my mother and father, because, by the way, I forgot to tell you, the guy got out after 3.5 years and started trying to reach out to us. So the lawyers from the law firm helped me by working with the state's attorney to get an order of protection against this guy, and then I never saw him anymore after that. But anyway, so they knew that I was a person who had gone through some challenging stuff. So anyway, I ended up taking that job, and while I was in there, my job was to file the books away and keep they had what they call notebook services, and they would send updates weekly, and I'd have to take out the old sheets and put the correct ones in to keep it current. Well, in the meantime, I went beyond that. I started paying attention to how they were doing research. I started learning how they were using the systems in the books to do research. I started reading up on how memos and briefs were written by lawyers and law students. So anyway, one day, the lawyers were sitting there talking, as I heard several times, about a particular issue, a point of law in a case. And so I was just eavesdropping, sitting there at my desk while doing my work. I waited until they left, and then I knew what they were talking about. I went and pulled 10 books that were what we call points of law that related to the issue or issues that they were trying to address. So here the guys come back. I had spent my lunch hour eating my lunch at my desk while doing that. So I went over to my desk and sat down, and one of the lawyers came in and said on their list they couldn't find any of the cases or any of the books that they needed. So I said, they're over there stacked up. They said, who did that? I said, I did. They said, you did that? I said, yes, I know how to do that. I was listening to you guys. Sorry, I was listening. No, 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 no. I says, yeah, I was paying attention. And they went and they looked at them and they said, oh, these are not only on point, they even had the pages that I wanted to start with. So one of the lawyers says, come on with me. Took me to the boss and said, we're wasting our money on this kid, librarian. And the boss said, what? He says, no. He can research. I believe he can write. I said, we need to do something else. So the boss says, well, why don't we do this? Let's have him assist us. So therefore, I became what they call a legal assistant or a law clerk, which is today called a paralegal. And I started going to court with the lawyers. Oh, by the way, they hired someone to do my job and created that position for me. And I used to go to closings, residential as well as corporate closings. McDonald's owner was buying a baseball team. I was in on that. I did all kinds of stuff there in that. In the meantime, I had finished at junior college and decided I was going to go to this four-year institution, got accepted at Roosevelt University, and majoring in political science, minoring in business. So I ended up continuing with my same reign, studying, getting on the honor roll and the dean's list, and I found myself at a point where it was the experience I was getting from helping to write memos, going to court, listen to the judges, talk to the lawyers. I was just getting some really great experience. And so, and this was corporate law. But then every once in a while they would do what we call pro bono or free cases in criminal cases, and I went to court with them for that, which is really what I was interested in because of what happened to me as a child. So at any rate, I ended up finding the time that it was time to get ready to apply to law school. And I was told you should apply to 3 law schools. I says, I'm applying to one. And people says, no, I don't care. I know you got good grades and you're doing okay. I took the LSAT. I didn't do the best at it. But what happened is I was confident of who I was. So I said, I'm applying to Northwestern. They said, do you know there's about 10,000 students applying for 250 seats? And I said, and I was confident that one of those seats was mine. So I put together my package. Your resume and your whatever papers that you submitted, your experiences, about 6 pages of material you answered. But my package was about this big. It was in a big box. And I had it carried over by one of the lawyers who taught there. And he delivered it to the admissions office. And the admissions office contacted me and said, we don't do interviews, but we want to see the person behind this. Could you come? And they set up an appointment for me. My bosses, of course, were happy to let me go. So I went, and I sat in a room, and 3 or 4 of the staff people from Northwestern had my package on their table and says, did you put all this together by yourself? I said, yes, I did. And I explained to them some samples of my writing and all of this. They said, you did this? And you're not in law school? I said, no, I'm not. And I said that I work at the law firm, and I told them what I did. And they saw that I had climbed up. And then one of the lawyers actually had shared with them what kind of person I was. So anyway, here I was sitting in the room, and they said, well, we don't give offers over, like this. We sit down as a committee, and then we decide who we're going to admit. However, we will say this to you. We can't admit you, but we will say that in a few weeks you'll get a letter from us, and I think you're going to like what you get. Well, that was kind of an informal way of accepting me, and I was excited. So a few weeks later, of course, I got the letter being admitted into law school. So I graduated from the college with honors. I was enshrined in the what they call the Lincoln Academy down in Springfield, Illinois, which is like a hall of fame for students. And I represented Roosevelt University that particular year. Out of 6,000 graduates, I was the one they chose to go. So I had all kinds of things going. I got honors in political science. I was doing well in accounting. In fact, I was close to a double major, but when I got accepted at Northwestern, I didn't stay another semester, but I did graduate. So at any rate, I was on my way in law school. I get there at orientation, and they tell us to look to the left, look to the right, look front, behind us, and we would see students who they tell us that in a few weeks we won't see them anymore because it was a grueling program. They told us we could not work, not even part-time. And so the person I was married to at that time had graduated and was a teacher. So all responsibility had to be taken over from that. So here I was in school, and I need to stay focused on what I was doing in a tough situation, very, very challenging. So that particular year, the Chicago Public Schools went on strike, and there went all of the income, and that put added pressure on me. Well, it was so bad that we couldn't pay the electric bill, so I had to study by candlelight and with flashlights. But the point of the matter is, and I had 2 kids at that time, I didn't let things stop me. I kept doing. We ate food that was, I mean, it wasn't the best, but the point of the matter is that we ended up going through. I challenged anybody. Well, I did get pretty overwhelmed by it, and I told one of my professors that I was probably going to end up leaving for a while, but I'd be back. She said, before you do that, come to my office. So I did. She sat me down in her office, and she said to me, she says, Richard, sit down over there. And she stood in front of the door, blocked the entrance and exit. She says, I'm not moving till you tell me that you're going to stay, and we'll work this out. It's not going to be easy, but I know if you got in here, and with all the things I know about you, that you can, this too, you can make it. So I made an agreement with her not to get out of the room, but I kept my word, and I said, I'm going to stay. And I did. I did pretty good. I ended up doing research on the criminal code of Illinois to change the criminal code to truth in sentencing, brought in extended terms. I did all that. In the meantime, at the graduation, I let her know thank you with a big hug and a kiss, and how, you know, it was her that kept me going. And so I did. I made it through. While I was in law school, one of my classmates, his dad, was a distinguished criminal defense lawyer, and he invited some of us to his house, and I shared with him after everybody left my story of what I had gone through. He said, you need closure. So he helped me out by taking me to the main criminal court building and letting me see files that related to what happened exactly with my father's case and with my mother's case. He also suggested to me, you might be pro-prosecution, but you'll learn more if you become a defense lawyer. So I took him up on it. And then he recommended to me. So anyway, I was at the big law firm. I had a job there, making really good money, but I left. I wanted to start my own, and I wanted to focus on criminal law. So I ended up starting my own on a kitchen table. Made $5 grand the first year, but it grew. It grew to the point where I had 2 law offices. I had 5 or 6 lawyers working under me. I had a full staff, and I was doing radio. Created a radio program called Know Your Rights, which was spelled W-R-I-G-H-T-S, after my name. The phone number was 974-4487, which spelled WRIGHTS. And I was on my way, well on my way. In the meantime, the attorney who became a judge recommended I go to California to take a seminar one summer, and I did. And I met a gentleman there by the name of, his name was John Cochran. And 10 years later, he would end up being known as Johnny Cochran. Yes, OJ's attorney. And so I learned from some of the best, along with other lawyers. So I did pretty well at this. I went through some issues family-wise, and I ended up, finding myself in a pretty tight situation. And so anyway, the point of the matter is that how do you know tight situations I dealt with. So I continued to move forward and move on with my life. And by this time, right, I had 3 kids. So when I graduated from law school, he came the third one. They were all girls. So then I ended up finding myself getting married again. Oh, let me back up. 91 to 93, I went to seminary. And when I was in seminary, I went to get a Master of Arts in Religion, and so I got involved in ministry. So I got married a second time, and then that didn't work out because she had other plans. We had one daughter from that, who's now going to be 28 years old. Anyway, I met a young lady after that, and we now have been married 24 years as of July 28th. We have 4 children. The ones that you saw on the picture in the student lounge, that's what happened. So I found myself in a situation where I'm continued to move forward. I ended up taking a job as the village attorney, village prosecutor, and a part-time police officer in a town that had some really tough, challenging, corrupt issues. So I ended up being a police officer. So keep in mind, I've been a paralegal, I've been a defense attorney, prosecutor, and police officer. I work with probation officers, I work with parole officers, I worked with correction officers because I dealt with visiting prisons and jails and things like that. So I've been involved with all of that. So in the meantime, moving forward, I decided in 2000, at 50 years old, to retire from being a lawyer. And so I started teaching special ed in high school, dealing with at-risk kids, which actually paid off. I had at least one student who reached back out to me in the last few years because of Facebook, and she said that what I had shared with her resonated with her and became a part of her even after I left her. And today she's a juvenile probation officer as opposed to being a juvenile delinquent. So I've had effect on students for a long, long, long time. And there are several others, but that's just one of my prize students. So, so then I ended up running a janitorial company, and then I started doing real estate closings for title companies part-time as well. So I did that, in the meantime still pursuing a career in ministry. In the meantime, I found myself in a situation where my wife and I, of course, that I'm married to now, we had these kids come along. So I reached a stage where the janitorial company went out of business, so I kept doing closings, and then I ended up leaving the school because I wanted to go back to school when I was 53, and I went back to get an MBA to prove to kids that a bachelor's is not enough and that you need to continue on. So I got admitted into the business school. Kids were amazed at me I was the senior of all of them. So I did that for a while. Then I was in a car accident, and I didn't finish with it. But I did do what I needed to do. So then, 2011, someone came to me with this opportunity to apply for a job at a school I'd never heard of, and that's Rasmussen College. So I put in the application after I did some research and found out that the school was credible because the chairman of the board was the former president of Northwestern University, where I had gone, and he was emeritus there, and he's the chairman of the board. So I went ahead and applied and received the job to work at the Romeoville campus as an adjunct professor teaching business law. That was the job they had for me. So I taught it residentially at that time. And then I told them that I'm a criminal justice person. So they transferred me into the criminal justice department, where I worked as an adjunct professor for several more quarters. And then finally a full-time position opened up, where I became the state program coordinator of the School of Justice Studies and began teaching full-time at the college. And since that time, I've been teaching here at this college, working with students, helping students, congratulating students, helping students even after they finish my classes, writing letters of recommendation, doing whatever I could to enhance student success. And so here I am today as your instructor in this course. I will tell you this, and I'll talk about this later, is that one of the toughest things I had to deal with, other than things I've shared with you, is in 1994 that my baby sister, the one I told you about, she overdosed on cocaine, and the changes I had to go through. We'll talk about that in weeks to come, but I wanted to share you that that's part of me. So I come to you with all of this, and I command excellence. I am willing to help. In fact, there's some student or a student in this class that I have had as a student in prior classes, and now not only do I mentor him, but I pastor a church now. He doesn't live here, but he's still a member of my church because he believes in me that much. And he's on the honor roll successfully since I started working with him. And that's how I am with every student. I believe in doing what it takes. One student said to me, "You're hard." I says, "I'm not hard. I'm focused. I demand excellence." We need excellence in criminal justice. And so I wanted to take the time to share that with you. It's about a little after 8, but we got started about 10 minutes late. So I wanted to share that with you and make sure you had that. So now I want to leave you with a key word. And the key word is adversity. That's it, adversity. And remember that. Let's get through this 5.5 weeks with excellence. Let's be on top. Let's stay focused. And if you run into a problem, you know what to do. So with that, I'm going to say good night. I have another session to do at 8:30. So thank you. And if there are any questions that come up between, you know what to do. So I'm going to say good night.